Well, this is a fascinating thing that's happening, and boxing is back, Peter. This is the main thing to say. Boxing is back. Frank Warren's first out of the blocks with his shows coming out of the BT Sports studio in Stratford. Eddie Hearn's following on with his fight camp in the back garden. But the first show is going to be the July 10th show, the Frank Warren show at the BT studios. It's going to be in 118 days since we last had live boxing in the UK. The last bell went 118 days ago to July the 10th when the first bell is going to go again. So, it's fascinating, but it's obviously boxing coming back in a slightly different guise with no audience. And how is this going to affect things? That's what we really want to know. I mean, normally, most fights, you'll have a home fighter. So he will bring loads of support. The support is very vocal. That does affect the judges, even though they say it won't. Psychologically, if every time a guy throws a punch, the crowd erupts, and every time the other guy throws a punch, there's almost silence sometimes. It does psychologically affect how you evaluate how the fight's going. Now, there is no home fighter now because there is no crowd. So it's going to be a very different experience for the fighters, who often feed off the crowd and feed off the support. So, it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out in terms of their motivation and how they can lift themselves. In terms of the viewing experience, it's going to be very different as well. I mean, Bob Arum did a show, he was the first one to bring boxing back in America. So Arum's done his show, and I'm sure Warren has learned from that. And, obviously UFC have done really well. And I've had a few shows behind closed doors now, and I've watched a few of those. And the experience for the viewer is very different. It reminds me a bit of being in the gym and watching the guys. If you get an intense sparring session sometimes in the gym and everybody turns around, silence descends on the gym and everybody's watching it. But you can hear things that you can't normally hear in a fight. You can hear the exhalation of breath. You can hear the stamp of a foot. You can really hear the slap of a glove. So, it's going to be a different viewing experience. And the interesting thing is, how will the guys at BT Sport deal with that? How will, in a way, I suppose they're not just going to show, have a camera on the ring. I mean, how are they going to deal with the ring entrances? How are they going to, make it atmospheric without the atmosphere that a crowd generates? That's going to be the interesting thing. And it does look like a good card, Peter. It looks like, one of the advantages, I think, of this situation, and there's always, opportunities in these situations. We haven't got any international fighters coming in for these cards, so it's really great domestic dust-ups, and it's guys, hot prospects clashing early on, which really a lot of people want to see. They don't want to see fighters too protected.
Okay, and in terms of the impact of the lack of ticket sales, how do you think that's going to impact on the fighters?
In terms of finances, I don't know. I mean, Warren hasn't revealed that. I would have thought there's less money on the table, full stop. So, I think Frank is saying to these guys, the purse is going to be less, but your exposure is going to be great. This is going to be a real opportunity. Let's face it, the two guys that are fighting, Brad Foster is the champion, fighting for the British Commonwealth Super Bantamweight Championship against James Beech Jr. That is a great fight. Both guys are 12 fights, 12 wins, undefeated. But that would normally be down on an undercard. If Dubois was fighting, if Fury was fighting, it would be way down the card, maybe before the crowd came in. So, or it would be a headliner of a small hall show. A real cracking barnstorming fight there, a real what we'd call a trade fight. Everybody in the trade would get really excited about these two guys clashing. But because of the circumstances, it's now elevated to top of the bill, on a live televised show. So it's a great opportunity for these guys. And so I think there's a trade-off, with these guys. They're going to get more exposure. So I would suspect, although I don't know, they're going to be taking less money.
Yeah, and I think hats off to Frank Warren and BT Sport and the fighters themselves for making this happen. Absolutely. Because it's really important, I think, that boxing stays current compared to football and other sports.
I think fighters need to fight, Peter, and they need that platform to fight, and that's been taken away from them. So, what can they do with this medium? How can they, get it across to the fans? And I think, there could be some improvements in terms of there could be these great domestic dust-ups coming our way. Where guys are putting it all on the line and getting the exposure they deserve, I think, because there's no other boxing around.
And do you think, going forward, last question, do you think that if we're going to be looking at a world where perhaps we can't go back to how things were before, at least permanently, do you think it can be made to work for everybody running this different kind of format of fixture?
I'm sure it can, and there's advantages to be taken from it. I mean, the Arum show, and big props to Bob Arum for being the first out of the blocks, but there were some complaints about the matching, where guys were just getting run-outs and not really competitive fights, and I'm sure Warren has learned from that. And these, certainly the two main fights on the bill that have been announced look hugely competitive, real hot young prospects clashing, and they're going to have to, but these are baby steps with Frank, and Eddie will learn from Frank, and Frank will learn from Eddie, and everything, and they're going to make these shows really exciting. How do they deliver this product to people and make it exciting? And I'm sure that it will develop very quickly.
Fantastic. And do you want to pick the winners?
In the main fight, I'm picking Brad Foster to beat James Beech Jr. Now, I know they're both 12-0, but interestingly enough, this is going to be Foster's 5th consecutive fight for the British Super Bantamweight title. He won the vacant title, he defended the title, he drew in his next defence, then he won in his next defence. So he has to win 4 times in British title fights to keep the Lonsdale belt, to have it as his for keeps. So that's a massive motivation for him going into this fight. If he wins this fight, he is a Lonsdale belt holder outright. James Beech Jr., great fighter. One thing I'm a bit concerned about, he's won the Super Feather Midlands title. He's won the Feather Midlands title, and now he's going in for the Super Bantam national title. So all the way from Super Feather to Bantam, that's from 9 stone 4 to 8 stone 10. So I wonder how hard he's trying to make that weight, and if that's going to have an impact on the fight. So both great fighters, not a lot to pick between them, but I'm going to go for Brad Foster to retain. And the next fight down the bill is Hamza Sheeraz against Paul Kean. Now, Hamza, this is for the WBO Super Welterweight title. Hamza is a real hot shot. He's 10-0 at 21 years old. So we're expecting big things from this guy. Paul Kean is 12-1, 27 years old. So he's a bit of a more experienced campaigner. But I think we'll find out. This is a big step up for Hamza. We'll find out if he can really handle the men, as it were. So it's a great fight. It should be a real coming out party for Hamza. I think this is his toughest fight. Toughest fight for both of them so far. But let's see who comes out. But in that one, I'm going to pick Hamza to continue his hot shot run.